So what is the most versatile handheld video game system on the market? Well, actually today you have a lot to choose from. Maybe like me, you've been looking at the ROG Ally, but now you see the ROG Ally X? So what is the difference? Well, today we are going to unbox the Ally X and I'm going to compare it spec by spec with my original Ally Z1 Extreme. And we're gonna see just how much of an upgrade it actually is. Handheld gaming. It's come a very long way since it was introduced to the market. Back when I was a kid, Tetris or Super Mario Land was by far the best experience that you could possibly get on a portable gaming device, and a fantastic experience it was. But if you would have told me, 25, 30 years ago, that one day all of the video games, or most of the video games, that I play on my console or my PC would also be playable on a portable device, sign me up. Because ever since the inception of the Game Boy, this has been my preferred way to play. I absolutely love handheld gaming. So with the introduction of stuff like the Steam Deck by Steam, I was smitten. But I digress. Today, we are here to unbox and take a look at the newest product by Asus, ROG. This is the Ally X. This is something that I have been waiting to get my hands on for a very long time. Okay, well, maybe it's not been a very long time, but since it's come out, which has been a few months. And I do currently own an Ally Z1 Extreme. I've owned one since they've launched, and I did buy this with my own money. Now, I've made plenty of videos about the Ally in the past, including a long-form video where I explained why my Steam Deck hasn't been powered up since I bought my Ally. And that's not because I don't like the Steam Deck, it's because, well, if you want to know the answer to that question, then you should check out the video after this video. It's in the description below. But just for the record, Steam Deck, very good. I just prefer the Ally. And so for the last, year and a half or so, I've been playing just about all of my games, at least when I'm not streaming on Twitch, on this guy here. This is the Z1 Extreme. Originally, there was always two tiers of the Ally. There was the standard base model, and then there was the Extreme. There really wasn't much of a difference between those two, and we don't really need to get into the details here. We are going to talk about and unbox the Ally X. And before we get into the real nitty-gritty of things, I just want to clarify one thing. As I said before, I did purchase this original Ally myself, and I formed an unbiased opinion on this thing solely on my experience playing it. I genuinely love how this thing plays. Again, there are other videos that explain why, but that is 100% the case. Although I will say, in full transparency, about a week ago, I was asked by Asus to join Team ROG. And I gladly accepted because I love their products. Not only do I use the Ally for all my gaming, but the PC I built has tons of ROG stuff in it, including my mouse. Again, all of that stuff I purchased myself on my own accord because I do like the product. It just so happens they have reached out and asked me to be part of the team, which I am thrilled about. So, that being said, this Ally X was provided to me by ROG. Full transparency there. Don't think it's going to color my opinion on how I already feel about the Ally, because that was an opinion that I developed a year and a half ago when I first started playing it. So, without further ado, let's unbox this thing and talk about the differences between the Ally X and the Z1 Extreme. The other thing that I want to explain here is all of the differences spec-wise that we're going to talk about is comparing it to the Z1 Extreme. We're not talking about the original base model. So any of the specs that I bring up on this baby here, all Z1 Extreme. So without further ado, let's get into the nitty gritty. First off, I gotta tell you, pound for pound, these things look damn near identical when it comes to the boxes, and just from the overall weight, they seem to weigh about the same. Although I could probably look at the exact weights. That sort of doesn't really matter though, because they're very close. The biggest difference is you can't see because I got this awesome D-brand case on here. And if you want to know what this is a case by D-brand and a skin. It's called the Kill Switch. I love this case though. As you saw, I also have the same case on my Steam Deck. All right, here we go. The first thing we always have to do with new electronics, I could already smell it from here. My God, it smells good. This is what I call the TST. If you've been following me long enough, you know it's the Tofer sniff test. I love the smell of new electronics, and I have to tell you, that is absolutely a 10 out of 10. This product could be a total turd, honestly, and it still smells fantastic. It smells like Christmas morning, you know. I used to get a lot of electronics when I was a kid. All right, so here we go. We have the usual presentation of a product like this, and it goes straight to, oh wait, we got a little something in the lid here. I think this is just their stand. Ah, rip the packaging. God, what a loser. Yeah, this is just their little, so they do give you these little cardboard stands. I don't know. It's basically for, you know, propping. It's a dock, but if you get one of these, you got a kickstand. So that is in the case up top, but let's get into the beauty of it all. Look at that. All right, there we go. Take the flaps off the side here. Oh, yes. All right. So I do have a case on this one. Obviously, it's going to add a little bit of weight, but I would say that they're like pound for pound, almost identical. But as you can see with this one here, the Ally X is black. And what you cannot see with mine, the Z1 Extreme is actually white. I actually think I prefer the black console better because white just totally gets dirty, especially if you play it a lot. I don't know, I wash my hands a lot, but... So there we go. There's the console for you. Everything looks pretty similar. All of the fans and vents are in the same spots. The volume buttons. This is interesting though. As you can see, I'm not sure why. We're gonna find out though. So the top one is the Z1, the old one. The bottom one is the Extreme. We have two USB-C ports here. We have one USB-C here. Also, this was for like some sort of like PCI out card, because there was an external like video card that you could buy for this that would turn it into like a pretty beefy desktop. But I see, unless it's on the bottom, no. I see that that's been removed. Interesting. Well, I'm really glad that I didn't buy that add-on because it was really expensive. But we do still have SD card slots, and we have headphone jacks, but it looks like things have been moved around just a little bit. There's your console. Let's take a look inside of the box here. Ooh, look at that. This is, I believe, a 65 watt? Yep. 65 watt USB-C charger. Here's one thing that I love about the Ally. Look at that. You probably can't even see the other sides of my hands because it's so long. Nice long charger, unlike something like the Switch, which does not have a long charging cable at all. So that's all we got in that side. Let's see what we got over here, if there's even anything. My guess is it's like documentation, maybe. That's probably what's in here. Yep. So it's my warranty card and that sort of stuff. We're just gonna keep that in there. So there you go. I mean, super simple, not a whole lot in the box. There really doesn't need to be, because this is all that really matters. So we're gonna go ahead and put this stuff back in here, because as you can see from my other ROG, we'll keep one of those out. I keep the boxes for everything. Now that it's unboxed, we're gonna get down to the dirty work. We are gonna go down the list, spec by spec, between the two of these, and really look at the overall specs. Let's start first off with the battery, because that's supposed to be one of the biggest upgrades to the Ally X from the Z1. The Z1 has a 40-watt battery in it, and the Ally X has an 80-watt battery in it. That's double the battery size. Now, what that actually means as far as battery life, I don't know. I feel like that could be subjective. It's really going to depend on what you're playing. Technically, an 80-watt battery versus a 40-watt battery should definitely get you more playtime. But I do know from experience with this thing, if you played with this thing unplugged, cranked all the way up at 40 watts, AAA game, you got maybe an hour if you're lucky in that game, which is why I carry around an Anchor power brick, or I just plug the thing into the wall. Because let's be honest, most of the time I'm playing this, there's power somewhere in the vicinity. I'm not playing these things like at a bus stop or like walking up the street. If I'm doing that, I'm gonna go like retro. These devices are being played when I'm laying in bed, when I'm on an airplane, when I'm in a hotel room. And in those cases, you always have power right near you, and you got a nice long cable to plug it in. So to be honest with you, the battery was never really too much of a thing for me. I know it's a sticking point for a lot of people, but to be honest with you, it's sort of something I really am not super concerned about. It's just not the type of player I am. Now let's talk about storage, because this is something that I actually did change on my Extreme. The original Z1 Extreme came with a PCIe 512 NVMe hard drive. That's a fancy way of saying it's a solid state hard drive. 512 gigabytes. I knew right from the start 512 gigabytes was not going to be enough for me, because, you know, I download way too many games. So the first thing I did was I went and bought a 1 terabyte and put that in there. It was really easy to install. I did make a video on it. It was quite a while ago though, a year and a half ago. So if you do go back and watch that one, sorry, I wasn't as good at the long form videos then, but there is a video on that. So the storage on this guy here, the Ally X, it comes standard with a 1 terabyte. It is a 4.0 NVMe, but it's a 2280, and this is a 2230, I believe. So that might mean a little faster load time, but it's pretty incremental. The other thing to note is this is offered in a 2 terabytes storage capacity. So you could buy an Ally X with 1 terabyte, which is what this model is, or you can buy an Ally X with 2 terabytes. I definitely would have preferred the 2 terabyte console, but like I said earlier, this was provided to me by the good folks over at ROG. Then they sent over a 1 terabyte. I'm certainly not going to complain about that. If anything, I might actually upgrade the internal storage. This is 1 terabyte, so I can certainly deal with it, but 2 terabytes, that'd be awesome. Okay, so now let's get into some of the bigger upgrades. Let's look at RAM. Okay, the Z1 Extreme, it came with 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 6400 RAM. The Ally X comes with 24 gigabytes, and it's actually LPDDR5X 7500. So you actually do have more RAM in the Ally X. That's one of the big factors between the two machines. Going down next to the displays are exactly the same on both of these. They are touch displays. They are 7-inch 1080p displays that run at 120 hertz at 500 nits. So you're not getting any difference in the display quality there, but I can tell you from somebody who's been playing on that, that's plenty of resolution on a screen that size. Everything looks pretty good. When it comes to the chassis, really the only difference is one's black and one is white. Again, you can't see that because I have this D-brand case on there. But when you look at the differences, they are saying that this is a more comfortable grip. I can tell you that just holding it right now, I played my Extreme quite a bit before I got the case, and this does have a deeper grip. Whether or not that ends up being more comfortable, I don't know. That's subjective. I will be putting the same case on this one that I have on this one because this case is awesome. Now next, let's talk about the thumbsticks. The Extreme joystick has 2 million cycles. The Ally X joystick has 5 million cycles. And it does boast tighter springs. Now, I can definitely tell you, just by holding both of these in my hands, granted, like, has some use on it, but the thumbsticks on the Ally X are substantially stronger and sturdier feeling. These are very loose and these are very tight. Now, again, I use this thing quite a bit, so take that with a grain of salt. I will say though, even if it is just because they're fresh, these thumbsticks feel substantially better than the thumbsticks on the Extreme. And now let's take a look at something that I sort of never use, the back buttons. This is something that all these new controllers and new handhelds tend to boast. We have back buttons. Do you use the back buttons? Does anybody program these back bumpers? They just seem so not functional at all. I never use them. The only time I use them is when I'm bringing up the keyboard or when I'm doing a screen recording or something. There is some hotkey sequences that utilize these back buttons, but just for the sake of conversation, yep, the back buttons got dramatically smaller on the Ally X over the Extreme. You can see the Extreme back buttons are monstrous in comparison to these. And that's probably because my guess is they were probably realizing people just weren't using the back buttons, maybe? I don't know. Maybe I'm the odd man out here and I should be using the back buttons. I just don't, you know, functionality-wise, I don't really know what they're for. They don't seem to be organically in a good spot. That's just me. Okay, now let's talk about the I/O. This is something that I noticed right away when we opened it, was the configuration overall is a little bit different. It does have the same headphone jack, so you can plug your headphones into it. Yeah, they didn't do the Apple thing of removing the headphone jack. I guess you're welcome for that. But you can also Bluetooth headphones into them as well. And now I'm actually looking at the USB differences. On the Extreme, we have one USB combo port, which is your typical USB-C port. It charges and it also transfers data. And then you had one XG mobile port, which was this upgradable port here that you would plug it into a dock and it would become like a powerful gaming desktop, which I never actually did. But on the Ally X, it's saying we have two USB-C ports, which we do. One USB-C, which is the standard combo port like on this, and the other is saying USB-C, USB 4. So this other port is a USB 4 port, and I'm guessing whatever they were doing here with the expansion port is probably now being transferred over to USB-C. So maybe it's a little more universal. That's what I'm gathering out of that. Now they do both still have SD card slots and the exact same SD card slots, which is UHS 2. You know, that's a decently fast SD card. I used to play most of my games off of the SD card before I upgraded the internal hard drive space. I'll probably do the same here. I'll probably put a 1 terabyte SD card inside of this Ally X and, you know, have 2 terabytes. So if you don't want to upgrade your internal storage, you could totally just do a micro SD card. Just remember, it's going to run a bit slower. Your games are going to load a bit slower off of the SD card. But in some cases, maybe not noticeable. Speakers. Both front-facing speakers. They are saying louder front-facing speakers, but I never had a problem with the regular speakers on this thing. And so if they're louder, great. They're just going to be even louder. I mostly use headphones. Actually, most of the time, I use my Vitcher XR glasses with my ROG, and those have a really nice headset in them. So I'm never really using the speakers on the ROG Ally. Anyways, although I can say, before I got the glasses and before I was using them as headphones, the speakers are totally serviceable. I don't think they're bad at all. They're also, you know, they're speakers. Let's talk about cooling. That's a topic, right? Because this thing does get hot. It gets hot, and the fans in there can be loud. I will say that. There have been plenty of times where that sucker has gotten so hot. When you're laying in bed, you cannot lay this thing down on the blankets. It needs that airflow coming in and blowing out the top. These vents right here, when you're playing, you know, a AAA game, they're blowing really hot air. Like if you put it up to your face, it's hot air. And this unit has what they call a zero gravity cooling system with 2 fans in it. And I believe the fans were 47 blade fans. I don't know who's counting the fins or the blades, but that's what the Extreme has. Let's look at the X. All it says is improved cooling. It does have 2 fans in it, but these fans are 77 blade fans. I don't know if more blades means more like wind force. I don't really know how that works. And it does say more cooling. And I can see, it's hard to see from the back here because I got this case on it, but I can see that the intake on the X is larger than the intake on the Extreme was. So I would imagine you're going to get more airflow on the Ally X than you were on the Extreme. So hopefully that means this thing stays cooler. Doesn't make as much noise. Now let's get down to max charging speed, because that does sort of make a difference. The Extreme here it has a 65 watt port, and the charger is a 65 watt charger. But the Ally X has 100 watt. The problem though is I'm pretty sure, yeah, it comes with a 65 watt charger. So you're not gonna really get that extra charging speed like right out of the box, because the charger that it comes with is the exact same 65 watt charger that the Extreme came with, which is a great charger. And to be honest with you, it's by no means slow. I think these things charge pretty fast anyways. But if you had yourself like an Anker, I use the Anker 737, I believe. It's a big power brick that I carry with me. That thing will charge this at 100 watts, which is pretty fast. That thing would charge pretty fast. And I am reading now that this USB 4 port on the top here is, it's USB-C 4, so it supports really high rate transfers, and it does support Thunderbolt devices. So that's kind of cool. That's actually a substantial upgrade from the Extreme as well. The other thing I'm noticing is the Ally X is thicker. And as I'm staring at these from the top here, we do have different shoulder buttons. If we look here side by side, you can totally see the difference. You know, the shoulder buttons, this is the Ally X here. The shoulder buttons are much wider, and they stay wider all the way across, as where these are a little bit smaller. So if you come up and scoot these together a little bit more. But see the difference between the shoulder buttons there? And this will give you a good overlay of the 2 USB ports and the top of the machine versus this one here has that external display port, whatever they called it, and the USB-C port. It is also notable that the power button on both of these are thumbprint readers, so you can use your thumbprint to unlock these devices. And of course, the last thing that we do want to touch on, just to make sure this is clear, even though I feel like it's pretty obvious with these two, they do both use the same processor. And that is the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme, which is why this one's called the Z1 Extreme. This uses the same processor as this. We just have an upgrade of RAM, we have an upgrade of battery. So yeah, if you go down the list and look at the difference between these two, those are really gonna be your biggest upgrades. You got more RAM, so it's going to be able to dedicate more of that to game processing, presumably, and you do have a larger battery. The larger battery is going to help if you're going to play unplugged. The larger battery is going to help with graphics processing as well, because you'll be able to run it in turbo mode longer. If you want to run a AAA game at the best possible settings on these, I highly recommend running them in turbo mode, which is 40 watts, I believe, at least on this one. I haven't tried this one out yet. And when you do run it in turbo mode, your battery is in like turbo mode. So I always plug this in. But with double the battery, you can run it in turbo mode and get, twice the battery, if you so please. I personally, like I said, I'll be playing these plugged in anyways. But enough with all the crazy tech specs, right? You're here because you want to know what the cost difference is. How much is this one and how much is this one? Right before I went live with this video, I checked prices on Best Buy, which is where I would suggest picking one of these up. I have recently partnered up with ROG, and I am Team ROG now, but I don't have any affiliate codes or anything. So, I suggest buying these things at Best Buy because they're usually always on sale there, and they usually always have them in stock. But if you want to pick up an ROG Ally Z1 Extreme, which is the older model, that's the one I've been using, they are currently on sale at Best Buy for $499, $500. The original price was $649, so $650 is what these originally sold for, but I almost never saw them selling for that. In fact, when I bought mine, I think I bought mine for $500. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure like right after launch, I bought it right around $500. I did buy it at Best Buy. I walked into a store and purchased it, and it was on sale, which they usually always are. Now, the ROG Ally X, currently on Best Buy's website for $799. I did see over Black Friday, these things were marked down by $100, making them $699. Currently, it's $799, but I would imagine they're constantly going to be lowering that price by $100, maybe even more throughout the rest of December. I don't know that for sure, but that's my hunch because this was originally $650. I would imagine they're gonna keep this one around $650, $700 as well. Really, if you want my personal opinion on what you're actually getting here, this is a Windows 11 PC. So that is a positive and it's a negative. when we talk about stuff like the Steam Deck, though I won't go into extreme detail here because I already made a video about it, this runs Steam OS, which means unless you want to do side loading, yes, I understand you can do all that sort of stuff, which I don't want to, and I don't want to have to worry about drivers and audio problems and all that other stuff. You can side load some Windows stuff onto it, but you're pretty much stuck with Steam. If you love Steam and that's the only place that you buy games and the only place you play, you know, maybe a Steam Deck is for you, because even the OLED model, I think, I didn't price it before this, so I don't even want to guess. But it's probably cheaper than what we're looking at here, at least. But the beauty of having a Windows 11 PC is you can play whatever you want. I don't have to worry about Xbox Gamepass Ultimate not being compatible because it's a PC. So a lot of the games that I play, in fact, I played Indiana Jones on this one for quite a bit the other night. There's a video that you can check out down below if you want to know how a brand new AAA game runs on this. You can check that out. I could totally run it from Xbox Gamepass Ultimate. Also, if you want to do stuff like the whatever the Ubisoft store is called, I don't remember off the top of my head, but you got the Epic Game Store. You do also have full access to Steam and Steam Big Picture Mode. You also have Battle.net on here, which most of that stuff is going to be on, you know, your Game Pass Ultimate anyways, because Microsoft bought all that. And you could sign into the PlayStation Remote stuff via an app on this as well. So the options are much, much larger than on a Steam Deck, at least right out of the box. And like I said, I don't feel like tinkering. It's not really my thing. I don't have time for it. I just want to pick up and play. And so that's where this is really great. And that's why I have chosen the Ally over the Steam Deck. Now, I will say that Windows 11 also is a bit of a detriment because it's Windows, you know? Like, everybody has their issues with Windows. I certainly have mine. And because of that, it does have a bit of a clumsy UI. We're not here really to talk specific details about the machine. I already made a video about that. This is really just for the sake of comparing the Extreme to the Ally X. But I will say, they do have Armory Crate. It's getting better. It does bring everything into one area, sort of like SteamOS, but it still doesn't negate the Windows 11 problems that you could potentially have on each given game. At least with Steam, you know, it's Steam Deck verified, boom, it's done, it's got the update, whatever. On here, you have to kind of change your settings. Some games auto-detect hardware, some games do not auto-detect hardware. But for the most part, I've been able to run like 500 times more games on my Ally than I ever was on my Steam Deck. Although I do love the hardware and I do love SteamOS, it's just limited there, you know. And the only thing left to do at this point is to power these things on and bench test them side by side, running the same games, and maybe up the settings on the Ally X. But we're gonna save that for another video, so this one isn't like, you know, an hour long. If you really wanna get into the weeds on why I've chosen the Ally over the Steam Deck, check out this video right here, where I explain it in detail. And if you don't wanna miss the benchmark test between these two things here and a video of my son inheriting my Ally Extreme, follow along, subscribe right here, hit that little bell. And until next time, enjoy the journey.